this is a joint presentation with Joe and I. Joe takes care of most of the radio frequencies, and we really work in collaboration on most of these things. So I really want to give you an overview first of what it is that we have in Dodge County. So our Dodge County radio system is a conventional VHF radio system. It consists of 5 standard VHF channels. We have one for the police agencies in the county, not the sheriff's office. We have one for the sheriff's office. We have one that's a kind of a backup channel called EM5. We have one for our fire repeater, and then we have one for our highway department. I believe those are the 5 that we have for our standard channels. They're basic VHF. They're not digital. They're analog channels. They served us well. In the past, we had really good coverage, and then they had what was called narrow banding about 10, 15 years ago, which really restricted how far out those frequencies could go, and therefore diminished our service. We had to add a couple towers, Ashpin and Fox Lake, when that happened, but it did not completely fix our issues. We also have one VHF P25 digital channel, and that's our coded channel that we use when we need to make sure that things stay confidential. A fatal crash, for example, we don't want to broadcast the name of somebody who passed away in Scannerland. So that's what that channel is for. We have 9 radio towers throughout the county, which are very good, and they all provide service to the sheriff's office, all police departments in the county, except for Hartford, which is slightly here, Watertown, which is the 3rd, they have their own, and then Waupun, which they do all theirs through Fond du Lac County. They still use our radio, all of those still use our towers when they switch over to communicate with us in our county. All the fire departments are supported by this radio system, EMS, and also the highway department. There's some other entities out there that also use the frequencies, but those are primarily the entities that use our radio frequencies here in Dodge County. We currently have some radio communication gaps, and on the map there, on the right-hand side is if we add 3 additional towers with our current system, what we would have. On the left-hand side is 9 sites. What we currently have, that is our portable indoor coverage. So if I'm indoors in somebody's house, this radio right here on my hip, this is the one we're talking about. That is the coverage. The blue is good. The white is not good. So you can see, particularly, certainly over in there's a little bit over there on the east side, which we generally don't have a whole lot of concern with. There's concerns there, but Waupun, Columbus, and Watertown and Waterloo areas are our biggest areas of concern. Also of note, that Reeseville location there, if that tower goes down, we saw that happen in a storm earlier this year. That tower went down. We had no radio communications in the southwest portion of the county. I was down there in the midst of the storm. I came into Columbus, was going out on Highway 16. I had no idea what was going on. I couldn't receive. I could not transmit because the power went out in Reeseville. And at the same time, we had a drowning that occurred just south of the city of Beaver Dam, which I was a close car to. I had no idea what was going on, if not for my computer in my car that I noticed it was going on well after it had been dispatched. So that's a perfect example of a lack of redundancy in our system, and that continues to be a problem for us with that tower. And I know Joe is working on getting a generator. You don't have a generator yet, correct? Not yet, but we're working on getting a generator to try and resolve that. But one tower goes down, and you've got a quarter of our county that has no communications. This is the portable outdoor round trip. So when you're outdoors, you can see it improves. I will say that this is what Motorola gave us from their propagation. It isn't quite this good. There's some blue there filled in on the edges that we don't quite have that good a coverage there. It's close, but I would say it's a little bit ambitious as far as what the coverage actually is. Again, the 9 sites of what we have now versus 12 sites of what we would have if we were to add 3 sites in the county, depending on the location. Now I'm going to play for you some audio that we had. Back on June 21st of this year, we had an attempted homicide and a SWAT deployment down in the Richwood area. That's down by Watertown. It was a huge struggle for us. I believe it's still an active case, so there's a couple parts I'm going to skip through on this, but I want to play for you some of the audio transmissions between my staff, the first responders that got there, the incident commanders that got there afterwards, and then traffic between me and our commanders out in the field, our SWAT commanders in the field, as they are trying to organize this incident. I'm going to jump around a little bit and play different pieces of this. All right, I think you get the point. That is constant throughout the entire incident. We were doing our best to communicate. We were using phones as we were able to. And a lot of this, I cut out a lot of the dead air between. It didn't go like that, but I've got about 15 minutes of radio traffic there that most of it has some garbled transition as part of it. And we were on the scene down there for about 6 to 7 hours working on this. And it was one of the biggest frustrations was being able to communicate. So we wanted to bring that to you. Early on in this incident, we had deputies on scene going in and finding a victim who was very brutally injured. And the gunman was still inside, and we are trying to get resources there so that we can pull the victim out, which they did. They went into harm's way and pulled this individual out of there. And it was very difficult to get resources in the right position. Me and the SWAT commander were so frustrated. We're trying to figure out how we can get resources there and communicate as far as what we needed throughout the entire incident. So we wanted to share that with you. And again, I could sit here and play the whole 15 minutes, but I think you get the point. That's what we saw for the entirety of that incident. And that's what we see when we are in that Watertown area and the Columbus area. 151 and 73, very busy highway. Whenever we have any kind of crash or incident down there, that's the kind of radio communication we have out there on the highway. Same thing up in the city of Waupun and around the city of Waupun. We've had a number of incidents up there recently that the city has been dealing with where we're assisting. We have the same issues up there. And so we thought, rather than just tell you about it, it'd be good for you to actually hear what it is we have to try and work through. Joe sent me this email about some marsh resources on the Saturday of the fair. Joe, do you want to talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, so I've got Climb and Lowell Reedsville behind us, as well as Watertown, and they too are expressing concern. I was monitoring while we were at the fair this marsh rescue that was going on, and the communications were just as poor as what Dale is talking about. The feedback that I got from both law enforcement that was there as well as the fire chief is that the handhelds needed to be held up in the air using their lapel mic to talk on them to make themselves a tower to be able to get into the radio system. We were going to pull some audio, but you'd hear the same thing that you did for the incident that Dale played for you.
What he just described is what we call the Statue of Liberty maneuver, where we have the microphone on our shoulder, and we will actually take the radio, hold it up in the air, and talk on our lapel mic so that we can get some additional coverage. Now imagine that from our perspective. If all of a sudden I have a resistive subject and I'm trying to get help there, I can't do the Statue of Liberty maneuver because my hands are tied up. I may have a quick moment where I can call for help, but if that's on my hip, those are the radio transmissions we're going to get. And raising it up an extra 2 feet helps a little bit, but not a ton. So it is an issue that we have been dealing with for a long time.
Dale had mentioned before that the use of cell phones was done at his incident. I think we can effectively say that cell phones, even in these identified areas, are concerning. The coverage is not great there either with cell phones, so oftentimes we're left with nothing.
So I wanted to go through some of the interoperability challenges that we also have. So our agencies, we've back when 9/11 happened, there was an interoperability committee that was supposed to change all of the problematic radio frequencies around the country, and there was standards that was supposed to be put in place, and it was really good in concept. But because of technology, and cost that never really came to fruition. So I wanted to go through what we are seeing here in our area. Dodge County, we are a conventional VHF system. Watertown PD is an 800 megahertz system. Those two systems do not talk to each other. So I cannot talk to Watertown PD on my radios. And they're 1/3 of Watertown is in the city, or in Dodge County. I can't talk to them. They have dual band radios. And so they're able to switch over if they need something. But they're not always monitoring that, and so I can't talk to them. Dane County is a bordering county. They have a P25 digital trunked system. It's a VHF system, but it's a trunked system. Does not talk to a conventional VHF system. Washington County is 800 megahertz. Waukesha County is 800 megahertz. Fond du Lac County is making a switch in the not too distant future to 800 megahertz while keeping some VHF channels. And so that is going to be another one. We communicate regularly with Fond du Lac County. That is going to be a real challenge for us. For whatever reason, that county, we communicate more than any of our other neighboring counties. Yesterday, we have some struggles I wanted to highlight as a result of these challenges. We had a huge operation yesterday. I was in the motorcade. We had an inability to communicate with our incident command because we had no interoperability channels that all of us could share. In the motorcade, we had Dane County, Madison PD, State Patrol, Dodge County, Columbia County, and then the Secret Service. We couldn't all communicate with each other except for a simplex channel, which basically only goes out a little ways. We were able to communicate amongst ourselves. It's not a repeated channel. But we had to have somebody in the motorcade that was communicating with command post, which we found was not very useful because we couldn't get all that information relayed out to all the units about what was going on quickly. Wasn't a great situation. We struggled. We were trying to find a channel that all of us could communicate on. It does not work. We had difficulties finding adequate encrypted channels that we could utilize in an event like this to make sure that we're not broadcasting in the clear tactical information. We made it work. We got through it. But we had a lot of static. And some of that static that you heard right here in Juneau. And we've got a tower right here. A lot of those channels we were forced to use are not repeated channels. So those were struggles that we had yesterday. We worked through them, but for example, we had a report of a car in the motorcade route, and I'm trying to communicate with the incident commander, and we couldn't communicate. I couldn't hear. We had to bring the motorcade almost to a complete stop to figure out what was going on, when in reality it was a Secret Service agent, that's all it was, and we could have kept going. So had it been a more serious incident, we wouldn't have known that. So yesterday was a really big, unusual event, but it really highlighted all the little issues that we see on a regular basis. I can go back to a pursuit that started in Dane County, came up through Columbia and into Dodge County. We were told it was a pursuit through that telephone game, through a dispatcher, through another dispatcher, back to the troops. We were told it was a pursuit. We're all racing to get there, lights and sirens going to get there. Turns out they were following, waiting for us to get there to perform a high-risk stop. We probably still would have been going in emergency mode, but probably not like we are in a pursuit. We had no idea. So when we get there, we're preparing, okay, this guy is actively fleeing, and that wasn't what was going on. That telephone game was a breakdown because we can't communicate with our neighbors. So yes, yesterday was unusual, but like I said, it highlights those littler things that we see on a daily basis out in the community. So we have numerous solutions that we believe we can come up with. And we have some, not final recommendations, but recommendations on how we get to solutions. What I don't want for you to do is make decisions without having adequate information. And I don't know right now that we have adequate information to make solid decisions. We do know, regardless of what we do, we need to install 3 radio towers to close the gaps. Regardless of any system changes, we need to have 3 radio towers because those gaps are large, and no matter what you have, we've got to do something there. We've got some options. These aren't the only options, but we have some options that we can put together. We transition our system to a VHF P25 trunking system, which is what Dane County has, which is what the State Patrol has. I don't know that that's the best option, but it is an option. I forgot the first version. Stick with what we're at and just add additional radios. That's the first option. Just add additional towers with what current system we have. That remains an option. It doesn't alleviate our interoperability. Then we have the VHF P25. Next is transition to an 800 megahertz system. Joe, maybe you want to explain the difference between a regular system and a trunking system?
So trunking systems used in areas that require a lot of radio channels. It's more efficient use of a radio channel. So you don't specifically identify this unit right here, this repeater unit, to a specific channel. Once the person in the field keys their radio, it assigns them the channel. So as long as you have capacity within that stack of radios, you can efficiently talk over the system. The disadvantage to it is generally the cost, I can say. When you start talking about the controller that goes onto the units, also the cost of the units and some other things come into play, but you're talking a substantial increase in the cost of a system to build out a P25 a trunking system of any sort.
So we can have the option to look at an 800 megahertz system, so we'd be able to communicate with these other 800 megahertz agencies. We have the opportunity to do an 800 megahertz trunking system. That would be great if we could get to a trunking system because that's going to help us with interoperability. Or we have the opportunity to transition to an 800 megahertz and maintain the VHF system. Right now, what I'm concerned about is if we do any kind of transition, obviously that's going to be expensive for the county to do. It's going to also be expensive for fire departments to do. And being able to maintain that for the fire departments probably would be difficult to do, and that might I think this is what Fond du Lac County is doing, so that the fire departments still have their VHF system to operate on. We could still have the same towers and things like that. So that's another option. And there's other options that we can explore, and we haven't had time to really explore at this point. And I'm not asking you to make a decision on any of this. I'm just telling you that there are options for us to take that we need to vet to make sure that we do the right thing. The last thing I want to do is put up 3 towers and then put equipment on it, and then 2-3 years down the road, we say, no, we need to switch, and you say, well, why didn't you tell us that when we put up the 3 towers? I want to do it right the first time. So that gets us to our logical next steps. Begin acquiring tower space in the Watertown, Columbus, and Waupun areas. I don't think we want to wait on that because we all know that costs continue to raise. We want to find good locations, and really you need to know where your 3 locations are, so make sure that they all play well with the entire system, because if you move one to the south a little bit, maybe you have to move another one to the south a little bit. So we want to start looking for those and identifying those and hopefully acquiring them. But before we purchase equipment to actually put on those towers, we need to determine the best path forward. And we need to discuss the needs of the stakeholders, discuss those options that we have with those stakeholders, determine the feasibility of cost, and then determine what options really are viable for the board to consider. And then we place the appropriate equipment on those towers. To me, and that's just me speaking, it might be a little different from any of these others, but I think that makes the most sense to move forward so that we can get some really good communication for our emergency crews. So my recommendation, and I'll give you some recommendations, and I'll see if the fire chiefs have anything they wanted to add here, is that we form a study committee sanctioned by the executive committee. That committee, Public Safety Radio Communications Study Committee, would include my recommendations, certainly can be altered, whatever you think is appropriate. The county administrator, I think, is key to have there. Having Joe there and myself there is key. Having 3 police agency representatives, which would be selected by the Dodge County Executive Law Enforcement Association, which we've already talked about this already in that group, and they are interested, and we have 3 people that are really ready to rock and roll there if this moves forward. And then we have 3 fire department representatives selected by the Fire Chiefs Association. We would certainly want county board supervisors there to provide input from the county board supervisor's perspective. I did throw in there after last night thinking about the highway channel, perhaps the highway commissioner might want to have somebody on this committee as well. And then we would meet, go through options, discuss what are available, and bring that back to you, the executive committee, for potential future action or direction for the committee to do additional studying. So with that, we, like Joe mentioned, we have the CLR fire chief and the Watertown fire chief here. I don't know if either of you have anything additional you'd like to share?
Oh, I think the sheriff did a good, excellent job on the presentation. Just reiterate on that call we had out in March, and had a water rescue call in 18 years. We had 2 of them in 2 days, but the one we had on Monday when we went out there, due to the nature of the call, the gentleman was high under the influence and had called and said there was 2 individuals that were lost out in the marsh. One of the sheriff's deputies and I, we started walking out into the marsh and yelling for the individual. And at the last minute, when we were coming up to him, he disappeared into cattails, and I dove in behind a tree, and the deputy had switched over to coded, and I was also trying to get in touch with Dodge on the radio. So any help by the executive committee would be much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you all for taking the time to listen to the presentation. We are obviously building a brand new station, and we're putting state-of-the-art alerting systems and working with Dodge County and Jefferson County and our own dispatch center to make sure that we can be alerted of the calls. And there is a redundancy of using the radios to make sure that if the internet goes down, then we have the radio to be able to still page us out for calls. One thing in the operational side is we're alerted, that's great, but then as soon as we need to start driving to the call, we need to rely on those radios to be able to communicate. And when I was a responder in the ambulance, I remember oftentimes not having my portable work and having to wait until we get to a place where there is service to be able to call for additional resources or those types of things. So it really is imperative for the safety of the responders and the patients and in the communities that we're serving to have better radio communication.
And one other additional item to note for Watertown Fire Department is their new fire department is going to be a little bit lower, from what I understand, significantly lower in terrain from where they currently are. So the problematic issues of coverage in the Watertown could be worse down in Watertown as a result of that, just even for their base station.
So our last big investment, I can say, was 2012 when we built the Ashpin Tower. We procured the land, built the Ashpin Tower. Cost us, from just the notes that I was looking at from back then, about $850,000 to construct the tower and place the equipment on it, purchase the land. We've gone a lot of years without it, or without improvements, so significant improvements. Since then was the push, as Dale said, to simulcast or to narrow banding, and that really cut hard into us. We were able to kind of fill in some of our problem areas with the implementation of a lesser cost of switching over to simulcast, which has improved things a lot. But we've kind of been there's been the elephant in the room that that investment of tower sites it needs to be done, and I hope with this committee being created and you and the county board, we can fix those, what I call oftentimes officer safety type issues.
So with that, we are happy to answer any questions, and our request is that you form the committee as recommended or as you see fit.
Is there the ability to co-locate, like in this Waupun area, Columbus and Watertown, certainly, they all have towers.
Correct,
For their own
yep.
communication.
Absolutely. Not so much, the public safety towers that I know are available are generally built to support what they need for their specific area and not really expandable. When we come in, we require a significant amount of equipment. And the better option, and certainly one that we're exploring now, is co-locate with like a cell carrier, or in the Watertown area, We Energies has a tower site down there. So trying to make that network and connection, but it doesn't always come at a inexpensive price to do co-locate on a monthly basis. We're aware of that, so you kind of have to look at the options. And I think with the committee, we'll be able to look at it and say, this is financially makes sense or it doesn't. Do we build our own? Do we procure our own land? There's a lot of stuff that comes into play, so.
The other issue that Joe has brought up in the past is that when we own them, we charge rent. And the rent is significant, and when you lease, we're paying that rent, and those rental fees have gone up significantly. So those are the things you gotta weigh in pros and cons.
You're not always guaranteed a co-locate from a cell carrier, but when you do, we have 5 of them that pay on a monthly basis, and it is revenue into us. It helps pay the electric bill and support the tower maintenance.
Obviously, this will force all of the agencies, the other agencies, to replace all the radios, right?
It would, if we were to make any police agency changes, it would. Beaver Dam
You're gonna change,
Beaver Dam PD has their own system. They would have to make a decision on what they want to do, but in order to communicate with us, yes. What we're recommended and we're going to start doing is purchasing all dual band radios in the time being so that we can start having those interoperability resolutions. That's going to be a long-range project. That will help if, like, Beaver Dam doesn't change, if they were to stick with what they have, fire department stick with what they have, we'd be able to still communicate on both frequencies if we made a change. But yes, the police agencies, that's why we want to have them part of this committee, because the police agencies would have to also make that change if they're using our radio channels.
And,
Answer your question. If we stayed on VHF and added 3 towers, then we would not have to buy new radios.
right?
Correct.
But if we go to 800 or the P25, then we're
Yep.
looking at new radios for fire, EMS, and
All
police.
of the agencies
All
that
of
are
the
using the
agencies.
towers would be forced to.
If we used a dual system, a 800 megahertz and a VHF, the fire agencies wouldn't necessarily have to change that. So there are options to do that.
there are also technology options too, in doing patching from VHF to 800 for a couple of years so that the departments can migrate their equipment on a basis like that. Lots of different things that can come into as options.
But I can tell you as a daily user myself, I can be in my own office, which is 3 blocks away. And there's times I can't get out on my portable. I go up to Henry Dodge, I can't get out on my portable. Down at Dodgeland School, I can't always get out. Down in Emmett, Lebanon, where I also work, I can be in the town shop, the town building, and not get out on my portable. I go over to Monroe Road, which is the farthest east road probably in Lebanon for me. My squad radio is scratchy at that point. So it definitely is a real need. How we go about it, by adding maybe just 3 more towers or switching,
Well,
we need to do something.
the reason for my question is more that all of these other agencies are gonna be forced. If we make the change here,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
we solve our problem, our highway and our sheriff's office. But then we inject a problem for somebody else that may not have the
police de-
resources to be able to, unless that $5 million includes buying them radios, which I doubt that we're gonna be buying radios for
Right.
them.
What $5 million? I didn't throw any.
Put in the CIP for the project.
That's just for the towers.
Just the
That's only the towers. So that's why we want to have police representation as part of this committee so that we can all talk about what's best and what's feasible, what we can make happen. One other piece of the technology portion that we didn't share, with a VHF system, it's very high frequency, that's what that stands for. It goes long ranges, which is good. Not as much anymore because it's narrowbanded, but 800 megahertz doesn't go quite as long. If we have the towers, we'll be okay, but it penetrates better. So what Dave was talking about in Henry Dodge and his building, it penetrates into buildings much better. So there's pros and cons to both frequency band, but that does seem to be the way of the future of where everybody is going. So, but certainly appreciate the cost, and that's why we want to have the committee to talk about it and see if we have the buy-in from the police chiefs. If we don't have the buy-in from the police chiefs, I think it might be a hard sell to have. But if that's a direction they want to go in, then we could go that direction. I think the fire chiefs would probably be a little bit later, maintaining the current system and being a little bit later, I think. I don't know for sure. But that'd be a discussion to be had.
I lean more towards the dual system, because I agree with Dave there that keeping the dual system going, then the municipalities could keep their radios working. If you would go to a single system, then I would say you guys would have to look for funding for the municipalities to replace all their radio equipment, because I don't think the municipalities have that kind of money to go out and replace all these radios. So I'd be leaning more towards the dual system, so.
And I think those are all things that we work out
Right.
after we put together some ideas and look at options. Before we jump to the conclusions that we've got to buy anything, we're going to have to buy something. But before we decide what we're going to do, I think we sit down, we go through, we find out what are the options, what does everybody think is feasible, and then bring that back to you.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we develop a public safety radio communications study committee to, with the recommendations of the sheriff, to research all the issues that we have here today in this proposal.
Second.
I'm just gonna slow
Yeah,
it
I,
down.
yeah, I got
You- you know
I
what I
got
mean.
questions. No, I got questions.
But we're not agendaed here to create a committee here. We're here to just get a presentation. If you want to do something like that, I just want to be careful and cautious.
The agenda does say discuss and consider,
What, does it say that we're gonna form a committee? It just says
consider the
presentation.
creation.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to ask where the committee is at with the countywide EMS. I know that's kind of a tangent, but it's related. What is the status with that right now? Okay,
Next meeting, we have to have that an agenda item.
Well, we do. There has been, that Joe could probably share, but it'd be better in a presentation coming later. Anything brief you can, I mean, we had a meeting about it, and then it's been in movement in the background.
Yeah, so there's been some consolidation within the agencies, some collaboration between some of them. As they can't fill coverage, they've been working closely with dispatch to provide the information of who needs to go when and where. And there has been some movement, I would say, in combining of the services as some of the recommendations. And with what's happened over the past 6 months, we've had a lot less calls go unanswered. But I think we're moving in the right direction. And I guess it's the positive and the reason, I guess, that we haven't met much to discuss anything further with the recommendations that were already there.
and can I ask a follow-up question? Forming the committee, would we possibly want to have representatives or a representative from this committee, this joint county EMS on there? I mean,
Yeah, so I think the connection is there with the fire departments, because fire in a lot of cases is with EMS. We could, if you would like, I guess we could reach out to the EMS Association also and have representation of this. The chiefs are comfortable with representing the EMS as it is.
Mr. Chairman. I would just like to, first off, thank you for bringing this forward. I know that, like Dave here, I've been in incidences where my radios don't work, and it creates some problems. I've also was blessed with the idea that all the resources I needed were on one channel, or were on one system. As we moved outside of the city of Milwaukee to operate, we did find great issues with communicating back and forth between interagencies. A lot of that was fixed with patches. I don't know the technical details, but we were able to communicate back and forth. I would suggest that I agree that this is an expense to our communities. And if we were to dual band for a while until they give the opportunity to change over, as they can. I think in the long run, that's gonna better us in what we were supposed to do come 2001, that we were gonna be able to communicate well with each other, and that truly has not worked out to the best interest of our citizens. I would also ask, though, that I think that this can be a link to, we have a community that you receive units from Waukesha County and Ashippun. We have Columbus, Hartford, and Watertown operate within the Fond du Lac system. They operate, they're on different communities and different counties. So I would like to see that we have interest from, if we're going to build a system and build a system that is interoperability with our adjoining communities and our adjoining counties, that we also take into consideration what Jefferson County, what Waukesha County, or Dane County, Fond du Lac County, what they're doing, so we can make sure that we are investing a large amount of money into a project that will work the best for everybody. And lastly, I know that I spent about 4 hours up in our communications center a while ago, and got to see how they function between Fond du Lac County, Waupun. Beaver Dam Fire had a run, Waupun had to come in. And I don't know right now if we are or not, if we are keeping track of from the time of call until the time of dispatch. But I know that to get that second due unit from Waupun was our dispatch center calling Waupun, Waupun calling the fire then telling the Waupun then telling Fond du Lac then telling us. And again, as the sheriff said, this telephone tag, only to find out that just by a slight accident, the dispatcher asked for a truck, for an engine from Waupun, and they wanted a truck, a ladder company. So we had this whole thing again, all circled around, and by the time Beaver Dam was there, they had actually picked up on a scene before that truck was even sent out. So that may seem like it's not that big of a deal, and maybe to some it's not. But I would recommend, or I would suggest, think about, if you're waiting for that ambulance that's in a community, or a fire truck because your house is on fire, a fire engine, try holding your breath and see how long you can hold your breath while we play phone tag back and forth, let alone the threat that our officers and law enforcement have with the sheriff's department and our law enforcement agencies of not being able to communicate when they are doing a traffic stop by themselves. And this is what they get for radio traffic. And I know we know this, but it's just something that I think is, needs to be said. And I just think we should move forward and figure out if we can come up with a solution to make the county's radio system operate better. Thank you.
Just one more comment about cost. This is a project that won't happen overnight.
No.
Many of our radios are already reaching or have reached end of life. Typically, if you say a radio is good for 10 years, that's okay. Many of the radios throughout the county are 16 years old, only because in 2008, during the flooding, there was a lot of money available from the federal government that purchased portable radios, and fire departments, police departments, sheriff's department, all was able to take advantage of that. Many agencies are still using those radios, and they're experiencing problems with those now because they're 16 years old. So this is probably a good time to start looking at this so that these departments can budget correctly and make wise purchases, knowing that many of these radios are at the end of life.
Can I add something to that? In our initial conversations we've had, police chiefs have asked, can we know what direction we're gonna go in? Because to Supervisor Beal's point, they wanna buy new radios and they wanna know which ones to buy. And if we wait, they're gonna buy new radios and they potentially could buy the wrong ones. So, and your chief is one of them.
We have a
motion on the floor, and we're okay to go ahead and vote? Yeah, I see, we have a separate agenda item for formation, so. Any further discussion on formation of the committee? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That is carried. And,
Thank you.
we can move forward. One question, Eric, how many portable radios does your department have?
Probably pushing 25 or 30.
30? And how much are the radios? $1,000?
Well,
8.
8,000?
yeah, they're, so getting up there. We've actually took a proactive approach to communicate with Watertown and Dane County, so we've been upgrading, but we just got the grants on the portables are right around 17 to 2,000, and then the mobiles for the trucks are anywhere from 25 to 4,000. And Watertown's replacing their, like, one step above us with the cost, so you're talking 4 to 8,000 a radio.
Your dual band radios? You have dual band radios?
Working on the new ones, the next one's coming out, we're working on trunking, so we can talk to Dane County and
So
Watertown.
the new radios you're speaking of, you say are only $1,700?
Handhelds for P25 capability. But yeah,
For
the new,
For dual band ones?
no, not dual. the
Not dual band, for the, that's
Okay,
just
so they're
single.
not dual band. That was
Single.
my question.
Next
Sorry,
Those-
Chief.
next one's coming up, we are gonna.
All right, because I know those to be in that $9,000 range. That's why I was just curious. I'm thinking, where'd you get a deal on dual
Those,
band radios? for
those are
17?
single band and also do not have encryption capabilities.
Gotcha.
So our
Gotcha.
radios have encryption capability, that's what brings ours up.
All right, thanks, Chief.
I would just ask that the committee, when it's formed, make a list of all of the agencies that would be involved, how many radios that would have to be replaced, and then we can put a monetary value alongside of that, because each of these departments is gonna have to figure out what it's gonna cost them. Because we've gotta get buy-in 100%, this isn't something that can be partial.
There's also going to be a lot of, there also will be, depending on the agency's training in there. I know that when we upgraded, you went from a channel, an attack channel, to a channel, a talk group. You know, it became more complicated for some folks to understand how the system operated. And there was some confusion for a while. Now it goes on, you know, it's without a flaw.
Mr. Chairman, I'll work with you then on the committee assignments then?
Yep.
Does that sound good? Okay, very good, thank you.
Can I ask an additional question? Since these radios, there's kind of a trend that the radios bought in 2008 are losing, you know, they're beyond life. Are there any grants available that you're aware of?
We don't know. I wrote, there's a grant called the JAG grant out there that I wrote last week in hopes of getting some dual band radios paid for. I don't know. Generally, that's a grant where it's difficult to get monies for, but I wrote a grant for 40 portable radios in excess of $300,000 to see what we can come up with, see if maybe they'll do I asked for also do a portion of that if they're not able to do the entire grant. They're few and far between though. We've asked our radio vendors to help us. There aren't a whole lot of grants out there. So, and I'm constantly looking because I know we need to continue to upgrade those. So we're doing the best we can to find those grants, but those grants that came out for the interoperability are long gone and they're looking in different directions, but we'll continue to look.
Thank you. This is when we are able to get our legislators to come to our meetings, this is one of the agenda items that we need to have. And we need to continue to put agenda items together.
So, Mr. Chairman, is it fair to state in this problem is throughout the state then?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I mean, I don't know, so
Yeah.
when we lobby,
Oh, yeah.
it seems to me that they should put funds for all the counties
Mm-hmm.
and municipalities, we're talking about some big bucks here, so.
So
That's one
they
idea.
do have a state, the state patrol system, first rollout was awful. And created more silos than it helped. They're working on a 2.0, which after seeing it, I'm not overly excited about. We'll see. And Motorola has now taken an opposition standpoint that has created their own statewide system, which agencies are all jumping onto. So we've already you got the Wiscom 2.0 system, and you already got a competitor there. So I'm not sure what that's all going to look like. So I know the state has put money into it. nowhere near what other neighboring states have done to solve the problem, because Michigan, Minnesota have statewide radio systems that work really well, but they put a lot of money into it. The state of Wisconsin is not going in that same direction. There's more of a mobile-to-mobile, squad car, and does not include really portable coverage, which doesn't do us a whole lot of good when most of our work is portable.
At the state level, other states, the sheriffs, I worked with Illinois task force, rescue task force. Been in their firehouses in Illinois, and by portable, they communicated to their people at TEEX, which is a training school in Texas, by portable, through a link system, through, it's either Motorola Starlink or something like that, I think it was called. I don't remember, but, so they do have, state of Virginia is the same way. They have some amazing radio systems, but they are a lot of money. And the state, you're right, the state should be stepping up to that. But the problem is we have kingdoms. Nobody wants to give up their kingdom. Nobody.
Thank you.